Today I'm going to show you how I feed my starter. And so my starter is really two ingredients. And I say not really, it just is two ingredients. It's flour and it's water. And there are different types of flour that you can use. Some people like to use rye. Some people like to use a spelt starter. And so these are just different things that I had, different flours. This is rye, buckwheat, spelt. This is semolina, and this is whole wheat flour. This up here, this is just Himalayan sea salt. I like to use whole wheat flour for my starter. And so let me show you how I feed this. In order to get this, all I did was add flour and water, and then over time, I just let it, sit there and let the yeast and the bacteria proliferate. But today I just want to show you how to feed your starter. And so I've got this rubber band here just so I kind of know where I want that to be. That's almost a cup. And so whenever I feed my starter, I just give it 3/4 cup of water and 1 cup of whole wheat. And so for your water, make sure that it is filtered or purified water. Make sure it's not tap water. Tap water is going to have chlorine in it, and either chlorine or chloramine, whatever your water treatment plant uses, that will kill your starter. This is alive, and so you do not want to kill it. So let me show you how to feed this. So I'm just going to take off my lid. And by the way, if your starter, you can kind of see this, it's been about, I think about 6 days since I last fed this. And so let me show this up close. It's been about 6 days, but I actually poured off the liquid. There was like a gray liquid on top. That's nothing to be afraid of. That's just, that'll happen. That's the byproduct of the yeast and the lactobacilli eating. So don't worry about that. I just pour it off, unless you want it to be a little bit more bitter when you make your products. But all I want to do is take this 3/4 cup of water that I've already put in here. Make sure it's not hot, and make sure it's not cold. You just want it warm. And so I have 3/4 cup of water, and I usually pour that in first. And then I like to stir it. The reason I stir it is because it makes it easier once I get the flour in there to incorporate it all. If I just put the water in there and then put the water and the flour and then stir it, it just becomes a little bit more difficult. Okay. All right. Now I want to put in my flour, and so I'm just going to measure 1 cup. And this does not have to be exact. I'm getting it everywhere. This does not have to be exact. I just like to get it around there, ballpark, as close as I can. All right. And I do prefer King Arthur flour, just for its taste, the texture. Alright, so all I do is just put this in here. By the way, King Arthur you can, King Arthur you can get basically anywhere. It doesn't cost that much. It's going to be around $3.50 to $4 for this whole bag. And so if you were just using whole wheat, for example, I can make, it takes about 3 cups of flour to make a loaf. And so you can make about 6 loaves of bread with just 1 bag. All right, I've got my flour in there, and I've got my flour on the counter. I'm gonna clean that up later. So let me mix this up. And what I'm looking for is, it's gonna be like a thin peanut butter. You know how you get the peanut butter, the natural peanut butters, where it's thick, but it's kind of got that looseness to it. And let me pull some out so you can kind of see. Just want to get it incorporated. And so, all right, you can kind of see how that is. Don't spend a ton of time mixing this. Just get it incorporated. And I like to kind of scrape off the sides, get some of that off of the sides. And that's it. Immediately clean your measuring cup afterwards, otherwise it's going to get stuck in there. It becomes very difficult to clean if you let that just sit there. Notice once I've fed it where it's at. So it's actually, let's see, about halfway. I'm gonna set this on the counter because I'm getting ready to make some bread. So I'm gonna leave this on the counter for about 2 hours, 1.5, well actually 1.5 to 2.5 hours. This is gonna rise. It's gonna get all the way up here to the top. It's gonna double. And that's how I know it's active and ready to use in my bread, but that's how I feed my starter. And again, I usually, actually I store this in the refrigerator, but since I'm getting ready to make bread, I'm feeding it, and I'm gonna leave it on the counter. I'm gonna put my lid on here loosely. I don't want to close it tightly. I want to leave it a little bit loose because it needs to get some oxygen in there, and that's for my yeast. The bacteria, and these are good bacteria. You want these bacteria. The bacteria do not need oxygen, but your yeast do, and your yeast are gonna make your bread rise better actually than your bacteria. But they both live in there and they live together well, but you have to make sure each of them has what they need. But that's it. That's feeding the starter, and I'm just gonna leave that there.